Welcome back to this series. In the last video, we made sure that we have dynamic relations between our events and our users and so on. Now in this video, we'll add bookings, because thus far the relation between events and users is that an event is created by a user or that a user created a couple of events. Obviously, users in the app we'll be building in the end should be able to book events as well and not just create them. And therefore, we'll have a look at how we could add a booking model and these relations in this video. So let's dive in. And first of all, I will create a new model because a booking will be a separate entity in my project. Now, this is only one way of implementing this though. You could also use the two existing models, and besides a creator on an event, you could also add enrolled users or anything like that. And that could be an array of user IDs of users who booked this event. Now, to make fetching easier later and to have the capability of conveniently fetching just the bookings, I will add a new model. But let me really highlight that this is only one way of implementing this, and you can definitely take the other route too. Now, in my booking model, we're not talking about the GraphQL schema. This is for Mongoose instead. So here I will import Mongoose by requiring it. And I will import, or I will set up access to that schema constructor Mongoose gives me. I'll then define my booking schema here by calling new on that schema constructor and passing a JavaScript object where we now define the schema. And in there, I will add two fields. The first one is, let's say, the event ID or just the event. And that is very simple. The type here of that field is, of course, schema types object ID, and it is a reference to the event module, to the event model. Now, obviously here we will just store the ID, but thanks to populate and so on, we could use that reference to populate it automatically. The other field is, of course, the user, because every booking has one event that was booked and one user who booked the event. So therefore, user now is schema types object ID 2. Types object ID is the type. And the reference here, of course, is to the user model, like that. Now I'll add one other thing, and that is a second argument to the schema constructor. There we can set up some options for this schema. We didn't do that before, but here I will set timestamps to true, and then Mongoose will automatically add a created at and updated at field to every entry it adds in the database. And this is quite nice so that we can later find out when a booking happened, when a user booked an event. So now let me export the model by calling Mongoose model. I'll name this booking, and I'll point at my booking schema, of course. And that is it for the Mongoose booking model. Now we can use that in our API, and I'll start by adjusting the schema. There I will add a new type here. The type is booking, and it will look just as I defined it. It will have a non-nullable event and a non-nullable user. And due to the special timestamps key or setup which I added, it will also have a created at field, which will give us a string, and an updated at field, which will give us a string. And these two fields are added automatically by Mongoose. Every booking will also have an ID, of course, because that is also added automatically by Mongoose. So now we have the booking. Now, obviously, we can now fetch this. Now, by the way, you could also add bookings to your event here and also to your users. I will leave it as it is for now. We might add this later. For now, I just add this as a standalone type, which has references to events and users, but I'll not add the inverse of the relation to the other models. Instead, I rather complete my schema here by going down to the queries and the mutation. For the queries, I want to have a way of getting all my bookings. So this will give me an array of bookings, which is non-nullable. It might be empty, but it must not be null. And of course, I'll have, let's say, a book event endpoint here, where I expect to get the event ID as a string. or actually it will be an ID, and that is just a string we pass in here, and this is required. And this will return me the booking, let's say. And I also want to have a cancel booking field where I pass in the booking ID and where I then get back, let's say, the event that was booked before and for which we now canceled the booking. So now I added 3 endpoints: bookings, book event, and cancel booking. And this now means we have to work on the resolvers next. There, I will first of all import the booking model from the models folder. So the booking model we just added, the Mongoose model, so that we can interact with the database. And then here, we have the export for events. I will now also add bookings here as a async function now, like this, just as I have it for events. And there I will also use try catch. So I will already set up catch here, where I will just throw the error again. You could do more there. I'll just keep it simple for now. And in the try block there, I now want to get all the bookings from the database. And therefore, I'll just use that booking object, that booking model, call find without arguments, and await for this and store the result in bookings. Thanks to async await, I use this syntax. And then bookings, well, that is what I want to return here. But it will actually return a mapped version so that I can adjust each booking, because obviously, instead of returning the raw data as I fetch it, I will return an object where I pull out all the document data and where I then overwrite the ID with booking.id without an underscore, and where I also replace created at and updated at to have timestamps that actually make sense to the user. So here for created at, I will use the new date constructor, and I will pass in booking doc created at, and then I will call to ISO string, and I will just quickly duplicate that line to do the same for updated at, so that this is returned in a readable and usable way instead of just that milliseconds timestamp, which is otherwise used. So now I have my bookings, but of course, to see anything there, we need a way to create a booking. And therefore, maybe at the very bottom, I will add the book event resolver, because obviously in my schema, I defined that we would have a book event resolver. And there I will also use async. I do expect an argument here, and that is the event ID for which I want to make a booking. To be precise, I'll get args, but in the args object, I'll have that event ID. So here I will now create a new booking by using the constructor. And in there, I need my event ID and I need the user ID. Now, again, we'll work on the user ID later. For now, I will hard code it. So we'll grab the one from above and set user ID equal to that. Or just user it is, not user ID, right? In my model, I named it just user and just event. So let's use that. And for the event, well, there, I, of course, want to get the event by the ID which I passed in. So we'll actually, first of all, get the event by awaiting for event find one. And there I'm looking for the event where the ID matches my args event ID. Now remember, I will get an argument named event ID because that is how I define my schema. I need that event ID here, so I can use it here, get that single event. Thanks to async await, I use this syntax, store it in this event here. Could also name this fetched event to avoid confusion, and then assign this in my booking. Timestamps will be added automatically by Mongoose. And therefore here, I can now create a result by awaiting for booking save. And then I can return the result here, and I will return it in the same way I used before, result doc. The ID should be result ID. And I also want to work on the timestamps, and for this we can really just copy the logic we get up there, where I replace created at and updated at. And again, you can refactor this to not copy code. I want to be very explicit here. So I will move in, created at and updated at. Only difference is I'll not be accessing the booking object, but the result object here. Otherwise, this should be fine. And with this, I should be able to book an event already. Now let's give it a try, shall we? Let's go back to our graphical interface, and there I want to run a mutation. Let's reload here real quick to get auto-completion and load the new schema definition. Book event. There I need the event ID. Now for this, I need an event ID. I'll grab one from the database. Let's say this one, just a string without object ID surrounding it, like this. And we will get back information about the booking. That shall be the ID here. And let's say created at. And this doesn't look too shabby. Now, please note that you'll not be able to drill into the user, for example, because I haven't set up the logic to do so. But booking works, and I can prove this by refreshing my collection here in the collection view. We have the bookings collection, and there we do have that booking here instead. And please note, I just made a booking again when I showed you that we can't drill into the user, hence we got 2 bookings. So we got that booking logic. Now, to drill into the user and the event, we need to use the logic we used before with our functions that could be executed. Now, I got a user function that only takes a user ID. I got no single event function. And therefore, here, I will create a new function. And to avoid naming clashes with event, which I use somewhere else, I will name this single event here. And there I get my event ID. And I want to use try catch here too. So catch any errors I might be getting, but only throw them back here. Obviously, you could put more sophisticated error handling into place right now. I'll do that later. I want to try something here, and I want to try getting that event, obviously. So here I will get my event by awaiting for event find one, or find by ID here actually, with my event ID. And then I simply return that event, but again, with the tricks I showed you before, where I get all the data in the document, then replace the ID with the event ID. And obviously, I want to make sure that for the creator here, I also, again, use the same approach I used before, where I bind that user function with my creator ID that is stored in that event I retrieved, so that we can drill into that creator later too. So that is that single event function. Only difference to events here is that I obviously don't fetch multiple events, but just one. Otherwise, it's the same logic. I return that single event here. And now we can use that, first of all, in bookings here, where I retrieve all bookings. There it would be nice to drill into the user too. So there I can already call user, bind this, and pass booking doc user, and also set up event and call single event here with bind this booking doc, and then it is event. So I'm basically, again, using the logic I explained in an earlier video where I drill into that. I use my event ID and my user ID, which is part of the booking I retrieve, and I forward that to the user and the single event function, which then goes to the database and gives me all the data. And this will only be executed if I really access this field. If I don't do that, this database query will not be executed, so it doesn't hit the performance if I don't need this field. And of course, I will use that same logic, and therefore I can just copy that. I will use that same logic down there when I book an event. There, I also want to be able to drill into user and event. And therefore now, if I book another event, and I want to get the email of my user, this now works. And if, on the other hand, I write a query, and I want to get all my bookings, then I can get created at. But I can also dive into the event, and for the event of the booking, I can get the title, and I can dive into the creator and get the email address. And this now all works. If I execute this, you see I get the 3 bookings for the different events I got here, and with the email addresses of the creator. And this is pretty nice. Now, the missing thing when we look at our schema is the capability to cancel a booking. And for that, I'll go into my resolvers, and after book event, I will add cancel booking. So exactly the name I set up here in my root mutation. And cancel booking also is an async function. Now, as you can tell by looking in my schema, we want to get the booking ID there. So I will get some args here. And in there, again, try catch. And you could omit this if you don't do anything else with the error, then throw it, of course. Here, I will try getting my booking. So I will use find by ID and pass in args booking ID. This should give me a booking, and I'll await for it. And then here, I, of course, want to kind of delete that booking, right? Now, actually, we can speed this up, therefore. We don't need to get it first. I can instead just use booking, delete one, and delete by that ID here. So by args booking ID. I will still await this, but thereafter, I want to return the event which belonged to this booking. So therefore, before calling this, I'll get my booked event by, first of all, getting that booking by awaiting for booking find by ID, args booking ID, and there I'll call populate, and I want to populate the event field so that I got this event data, right? So I got the booking with the rich event data. Then here, I want to get that event by accessing booking event. That will be my rich populated data. I will spread this into a new object, because there I want to override the ID to be booking event ID with that virtual getter. And I want to override the creator here to use my user function, bind this, and then pass booking creator, so that ID as an argument, so that I can drill into this event and drill into the creator of the created event here. And now, with this set up, I delete my booking, and then I can return this prepared event here. For that, I'll save this. And now I just need the ID of a booking. So I will actually fetch my ID here. Let's grab that first one. And now let's run a mutation where I cancel a booking. And the booking ID is that ID I just grabbed. And then for the event I get back, I want to have a title. And that should be testing, as you can tell here. And I want to dive into the creator and get the email address. If I hit enter, that fails. Event title fails. Let's console log that event here. And let's quickly go to Atlas and grab another booking, because it should have been deleted actually. So yeah, only 2 bookings left. Let's grab that other booking here. Try to delete that. Obviously, it will still fail. If we have a look here, obviously, my mistake is I'm not using doc here. I should be using _doc for retrieving my event data. Like this. Now if I save that, can get rid of that console log. Now it should be working. So let's now cancel that last booking that should be remaining. If I refresh MongoDB, here it is. Let's move over and let's try canceling this. And cannot read property doc of null. And the problem here is that when I bind the ID of the creator to that user function, I, of course, should also access doc on the event, of course, and not on the booking itself. The booking doesn't have a creator. Booking has a user, but I'm looking for the creator of the event, so I need to access booking event. So now with that, I deleted all my bookings, so let's create a new one. Hence, I'll grab a new event ID. And then again, try a mutation where I call book event for this event ID here. And now there, let's immediately get back the ID, obviously, and run this. Looks good. And now let's run another mutation where I cancel the booking for that booking ID. And this now should return us the cancel event. So there I want to get the title and also the email address of the creator. And this now looks better. And if we check our Atlas cluster in the bookings, indeed, we find no bookings. So this is now the booking functionality added. As I explained, you could also add inverse relations on event and user. So add some fields to the event and user model to point at the booking model. We might do this later. For now, I like this setup, which I have here, and we'll see if we need more flexibility later to query for that later. We can obviously also split the resolver a bit more because this file is already getting huge too. But we have the core, the very core functionality of our backend API implemented now. Obviously, authentication is missing, and as I mentioned, cleanup work can be done. But this was another major step forward, and therefore we're not far from finishing this backend altogether. So hopefully see you in the next part of this series. Bye.